women are saying we're not going to do Thanksgiving this year. We're not going to go see our family because they voted for Trump.
We're talking about a celebration, a holiday celebration that centers around family, and yet politics seems to be this major issue that's dividing.
And it's worth canceling, a yearly tradition.
Well, it's so important to remember what is the spirit of Thanksgiving. It is the coming together of vastly different cultures, vastly different worldviews, and breaking bread in a condition of survival.
Yeah.
And goodwill and helping one another.
Hello, and welcome to the Pop Culture Contrarian with Thomas, Sterling, and Andrew.
Hello.
Hey, guys.
Our episode today is going to be the Thanksgiving episode of the Pop Culture Contrarian. And before we start, we want to remind you to go ahead and like and subscribe on YouTube, on Apple, on Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Tell your friends about us. And so here we go.
Yeah, Thanksgiving 2024. It is a late Thanksgiving this year.
It's as late as it gets because the first day of November was a Friday.
Yeah, and what a month it has been.
It's been a good month. I am thankful for this November.
Yes.
Yeah, it's one of the best Novembers on record.
Yep.
And an interestingly, unseasonably warm November.
In our area, it's finally cooled off a little bit the past couple days. But
yeah, it almost hasn't felt like fall until like this week.
Yeah. It hasn't been summer or anything, but it's been a little bit too warm.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to start with this article that we found, and it's part of a kind of a broader trend.
Kind of piggybacking off of last week's.
Yeah, so
topic.
Last week our topic was the 4B movement and women who are giving up on men. And now Newsweek is reporting that women are boycotting Thanksgiving with their Trump-supporting family. So women are saying we're not going to do Thanksgiving this year. We're not going to go see our family because they voted for Trump.
Yeah, there's some problems right there.
Yeah, you could say that.
This whole politics over family. It's like, what is really the most important relationship here?
Right. I got into an internet discussion with somebody about that exact point. And I was like, if you can't decide if your family or, the nation you live in is more important, then there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, it's kind of another maybe element or symptom of when politics becomes everything or when politics enters everything. One of the things that we have noted previously is how politics has seemingly stuck its fingers in every aspect of life. And it's just, we're tired of it. I think we most talk about it when we're talking about like movies and stuff, but it's true. It seems like maybe to be fair, it's an election year. And of course the politics of the time are going to be heightened because of that fact. But still, we're talking about a celebration, a holiday celebration that centers around family. And yet politics seems to be this major issue that's dividing.
And it's worth canceling, a yearly tradition. And presumably for these women, every single year every fourth year, their whole life has been an election year. So,
Well, I think really what we're looking at here is an orthodox reaction to a woke religion. And it is just so evident that this religion is one not of grace, not of peace, not of forgiveness, but of vindictive, power-wielding, power-hungry, unforgiveness, pride, and anger.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an element of vengeance in this, I guess. I'm going to get you for how you voted.
Yeah.
Why don't we go ahead and read excerpts from one of the articles you found that kind of highlights this attitude.
Yeah, so there's a few things that I think are worth reading. I'm going to start with this bit from the Newsweek article, which says, the fact that I'm skipping Thanksgiving with my family is not that they're Republicans. It's the fact that they voted for Donald Trump, knowing who he is and what he is capable of. And I'm mourning the fact that my family is educated white people and they still voted for him. And they still voted for him.
I wonder if Trump had not won, if any of these conversations would be happening, because the fact of the matter is they still voted for him.
Yeah, that's actually a good point.
And they would have known that, presumably, would they still have had this anger?
Yeah, I bet there would still be Kamala voters who don't want to associate with Trump voters, even if she'd won.
Yeah, because I think part of the narrative that the Kamala Harris campaign ran with was, Trump is the next fascist kind of narrative.
Yeah.
And so let's say she won, and yet you have,
your dad voted for Hitler.
Right. So then there would have been the same story, but in the sense of like, how do I, try to convince my family members who voted for the guy who was going to be the next Hitler? I could see those articles almost being the same. Just
maybe so. I can see the converse happening though. And this is the reason why,
Okay.
because the left, the worldview is based on a power dynamic, and that is a power of man dynamic. It's not a rule of law. It's not a rule of God. It's the rule of man. And when you have the moral superiority and because of the power you wield, as long as you're in power, everything's okay.
Yeah.
And it's not based on a consistent set of principles. Well, I take that back. There are some principles involved, but they are changeable based on who is wielding the power. So that's why, Thomas, I think it's possible that we could have seen some like that, but I don't know that they'd be widespread due to that logical conclusion.
Yeah, possibly.
So here's a question for you guys. If your cousin or uncle who's going to be at Thanksgiving had voted for Kamala and she had won this election, would you refuse to go?
No,
of course not.
Yeah, no chance.
Yeah.
My family is more important to me than any other association I'm a part of. My family is the most important association to me, aside from the body of Christ, the church.
Yeah. I think there's probably an element of this is that some people are just insufferable about their politics, one side or the other, right? Yeah. And if you happen to be one of those individuals who likes to preach your politics at your relatives, then people, just in general, people probably are uncomfortable with that and don't like to be around you necessarily, especially if your political opinion is on the opposite side of the spectrum. However, if you happen to be one of those people, which I'm wondering if some of these women aren't some of these people who are very verbal about their political opinions, when your candidate loses and you're this type of person, you don't want to go to a scenario where people are going to be like, basically like the kid in The Simpsons. Ha ha. Yeah. I mean, I think I can just see that happening, and they just would rather not have to face that. And so maybe they're coming up with an elaborate excuse as to why they should not have to go. I mean, that might play into this. Yeah. They don't want to have to face the music of their candidate lost, despite all the rhetoric that they were preaching.
I will say, if you're listening and you're expecting that there will be a Kamala voter at your family Thanksgiving this year, let's not, ruin this Thanksgiving event for our family because we're gleeful that Trump won and that she lost. Because I personally think if she'd won, it would have been the worst thing I'd seen happen in my country in my lifetime, just about. But just because we won, actually, maybe because we won, we can be magnanimous and we can let them suffer in silence and not rub it in. And just enjoy this holiday that we get to experience every year in this wonderful country and come together and eat good food and laugh and joke and, do whatever your Thanksgiving traditions are. Well,
I mean, based upon what our nation was founded on and is historically existed to support, which is freedom of the individual, liberty, so that, and a limited government, not a threatening government. Mm-hmm. And so that, when that is in place, it frees you from politics being everything.
Yeah.
Right? So that you can go and enjoy Thanksgiving with your family and you don't even have to think about politics because it shouldn't even be entering anything that you're engaged in with them at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
So generally speaking, as a conservative, I've kind of looked at the politics like if the conservative wins, there's not going to be any threatening changes to the way, whereas generally when it's the progressive candidate who wins, they have, a litany of things about that they fundamentally want to change about our system
Well, and one of the best examples of this is Chuck Schumer was talking before the election. All the Senate Democrats were talking about ending the filibuster.
Yeah.
And one of them went on the record and was asked this question. Now that Republicans won the Senate, do you support ending the filibuster? And she actually said, yes, I still support it. Not right now, but I support it. And it's like, wow, you don't understand the lesson you just learned. Like you're not even trying to learn anything here.
It's rules for thee and not for me, because they believe they have moral superiority. And so they should, any means justify the ends for them.
Yeah. Yeah. When we're in power, we can do whatever we want. When you're in power, you have to be magnanimous and nice to us and bipartisan. And I don't really know that I want the Senate to try to be too hard to be bipartisan.
Well, I mean, I do think there's always changes. So let's be honest. There's always changes to one degree or another. Generally, the changes aren't as significant as the politicians on either side are saying they are or warning they are.
Yeah. So that's a good point, that the changes aren't going to be as significant as politicians are saying even. Yeah. But let's just, before we pivot away completely from these women boycotting Thanksgiving, let's read part from this Huffington Post article of why this woman won't go to Thanksgiving with her family. She says, I'm going to read this whole paragraph. It's hilarious and horrible at the same time. I will not give thanks and hold hands in a circle with people who voted for a party that wants to take rights away from LGBTQ people. I will not pass the turkey to someone who supports people who have signaled they will cause harm to people with disabilities and the elderly. I will not sit by a Christmas tree celebrating the birth of Jesus. And this part, side note, this part is incredibly out of touch. Celebrating the birth of Jesus and sipping eggnog when I know how many people may now find themselves in grave, even deadly danger because they cannot get the reproductive care they need. So she's talking about the birth of Jesus, and in the same sentence saying, I can't celebrate Jesus's birth without women being able to have abortions.
Yeah, there's something I think about surrounding the political conditions of Jesus's birth. There's an individual named Herod who happened to, be a massive baby killer.
Yeah, it's almost like Joseph and Mary had to flee with baby Jesus to Egypt to survive.
To keep him from being killed by the state.
Wow. I wonder if history has some lessons to teach us, Andrew.
Maybe read the Bible before you quote such things, eggnog sipping woman.
Yeah.
Well, I think, what this is obviously this is an expression. It's number one, when I hear stuff like this, it just sounds childish and selfish. I didn't get my way, therefore I'm going to try to hurt other people by,
taking my ball and going home.
Yeah, effectively. There's a kind of a desire for some type of vengeance for the fact that that people dare disagree with your opinion on politics.
Yeah.
That's literally what that is. I don't like the fact that family members of mine don't see the world the same way I do. And so therefore they voted for the candidate that they more see eye to eye with. And that makes me angry. And so therefore I'm going to, do what I can to, hurt them by removing my presence or not entertaining them or not making them think it's okay or whatever kind of self-righteous justification they come up with for, damaging family relations. I mean, that's what this is. Mm-hmm. And, when you hear this from a political, at least an element within a political party, that,
well, it's concerning.
It's concerning because what it is it's, and we've made this point, at least at the Patriot Post for a long time, but the left tends to be anti-family, not pro-family.
Yeah.
And this is kind of an example of that in a certain way where they think it's okay because their political agenda was not met in this instance, that it's okay to take it out on the family. And in fact, the family in some ways is the problem is kind of what you're reading into this, because the family is only so good as the family does what you want it to. As soon as it doesn't do what you want it to, then it's fine to throw it off. That's the message.
Yeah. These people are saying exactly what you just said. Choose your politics over your family, which is just, let's understand the basic reality here. The most effective support structure that any human being is ever going to have throughout their entire life is going to be their family. Hopefully it's going to be their mom and dad, but if not, it'll be the family they build themselves. But either way, your family is going to be the best support structure you have for getting through life, for surviving the ups and downs, for, getting through illnesses that you're ever going to have.
In general.
There will be specific exceptions.
There are instances where that's not true, but yes.
Well, I can add one more to the whole idea of separating from the family. And I think Dennis Prager said this. What entities separate people from their parents and from their family? Cult entities.
Yeah.
They demand that you are separated from what is generally the most strong and caring support structure that a human being does have. I know it's not always true for everyone, but for most people it is.
For the vast majority. Yeah.
Right. And when Dennis mentioned that, I was like, of course, this is a cult. Clearly, it's separating families from one another intentionally.
Yeah, it teaches women to murder their own babies.
Yes, it's terrifying.
It is terrifying. And it's horrible. And it's, it does bring up the question. I kind of touched on this a little bit, but how do we approach this? If you're listening and there is going to be someone at your Thanksgiving who is a rabid Harris voter who says you voted, to take away abortion rights, or you voted to enact Project 2025, which is not what you voted for, because it's not what Trump's going to do. How are you supposed to approach this? How do you? Andrew voted for Project 2025, but you maybe didn't.
Read the book.
How many pages is it?
Oh my gosh, it's like a couple thousand, probably.
It's a ponderous tome, to quote Charles Dickens.
Yeah, it's just under 1,000 pages.
Oh, okay, all right. Only about 1,000 pages. Yeah. It's not too bad.
Light reading.
Yeah. So I don't quite know how you would handle that if you have someone like that at your family Thanksgiving, except love and kindness and charity, and try to find somewhere you can actually break through the propaganda that's been woven around them.
Well, it's so important to remember, what is the spirit of Thanksgiving? It is the coming together of vastly different cultures, vastly different worldviews, and breaking bread in a condition of survival.
Yeah.
And goodwill and helping one another. And I know there are probably, mostly from the left, a lot of opinions about the white man and the taking advantage of the natives and all of that kind of stuff.
But the fact is that does not apply to the first Thanksgiving between the Pilgrims and the Indians.
It doesn't. And I don't know if it's worth reminding people, if one would even be capable of getting through to folks who are in this conundrum of being so wokefully obtuse.
Yeah.
But, if we can somehow help them to remember, this is the spirit of the season. It is not a spirit of vindictive anger, vengeance, or any of those things.
And it's not a spirit of, I'm stronger than you, I won, I got my way, you're not going to survive, ha, 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 because that's not the attitude the tribes around the Pilgrims had. If they had that attitude, the Pilgrims would not have survived.
Correct.
So yeah, Andrew's right. Try to find some way to reach out to them. It'll probably be tough if they're as bad as some of these people we see online, but
kindness is always the key. Kindness and understanding, being charitable, and all of the tenets of what this season means.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it? Scripture says, a soft answer turneth away wrath. There's the approach of recognizing that, the number one thing is you're valuing your family member as a human being, not just a fellow human being, but as family.
Yeah.
And there's a connection there that is more valuable than all the kind of big things out there or what's happening in Washington or something like that, that is more enduring and lasting and important to cultivate. And so when you have, families are the weird things, because families, you can have some of the most difficult relationships that you'll ever have can be with a family member, but also the closest. And so there's a lot more elements into it. So sometimes when I'm hearing, the expression of these individuals who are saying, well, my family voted for Trump, so I can't be with him. There's a whole lot more there. Obviously, it's not just that they voted for Trump. You've had to have disagreements on a lot of things to get to a point where you're seeing the world so differently. Yeah. And so it's not just, it's easy for us to look and say, well, look, it's just because Trump and this is how they react on Trump. No, there's a whole lot more there. And so chances are, if you've got great relationships with your family and some of them voted for Harris and others didn't, chances are this won't be an issue. Yeah. It won't. Yeah. But so, I think the big thing with Thanksgiving is it's not about you, It's not about you. It's about what, as believers, we know this, about what God has done in preserving and blessing us. And our nation recognized, the Pilgrims, if you look at the year they had, that when they came, and none of us could, I think, very few of us could honestly say we've had as rough a go of it as those Pilgrims did.
I think it's safe to say that there's hardly an American alive who's had as bad a year as the Pilgrims had that year.
Right. And yet they survived it. They turned to the Lord and blessed him and thanked him and for continuing to sustain them. And I think they were recognizing that bigger issue. We're happy that Trump won, but Trump isn't the reason by any means that this nation will sustain.
No.
It's not about a man.
It's not about a man, or it's not about a man now. It's about the man, you could say. And so,
big man.
Right. And that's what I think our country was established on. That Thanksgiving was the uniquely American holiday. I think other nations have adopted it, but you could say it originated with us.
It did. I think Canada is the only other nation that has a Thanksgiving, and theirs has a separate origin.
Right. And so it was just an expression of recognizing that ultimately what sustains us, what holds us together, what keeps us going is God. And we're thankful for that. And then we can look at specific elements throughout the year that we can point to and say, look, that was, I'm thankful this happened, or I'm thankful for this, or even the hardships you can be thankful for.
Yeah. And you learn the most from hardship, probably.
Often, yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of got us there to kind of our wrap-up point here, which is, what are we, the members of the Pop Culture Contrarian, thankful for this year? I'm going to go ahead and start, and then Andrew, I'll throw to you. One thing I'm thankful for this year is that beautiful graph, that graph that God used that made Trump turn his head. And it's so hard to overstate how significant that moment was, where I believe God had Trump turn his head and that bullet missed by a centimeter from killing him and igniting probably the worst political turmoil America's ever seen if it had killed him.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm thankful for a future that my children have that is very likely going to be more safe. It is likely going to be more prosperous. There will likely be better educational opportunities. There will likely be better economic opportunities. I'm thankful for, although it's still a dangerous world, the potential for a stayed total war scenario, at least for now. Of course, anything could happen, but compared to where we could have been, I am thankful for those prospects.
Yeah, on that real quick, what I've been saying to my friends is, I think with this election, we have a chance to avoid World War III. It's still just a chance. Things are pretty frenetic in the world at the moment and pretty dangerous, but I think we have a hope that we didn't have if he had lost.
But even if we do have to face that, at least we have the makings of a strong footing now.
Yeah. Thomas?
I'm thankful for, kind of just more broadly speaking, but we get to enjoy it every day. I'm thankful that I live in a country where I'm free to say what I believe. I'm free to worship. I'm free to, work hard at something I'm interested in and go as far as I can with it. That just all those things that we tend to, I'm thankful that I can go to a grocery store and buy pretty much whatever I want as far as food. That I'm thankful just for the myriad of opportunities that, we like I said, we take for granted. But this is, every day is pretty awesome. And to be honest with you, we talk about, Sterling and I were talking earlier. I mean, even we live in 2024 in America, and even the poor people in America enjoy privileges that kings didn't centuries ago. Everything from your electricity to running water, a toilet, basic things that they've become so commonplace that we just don't even recognize them as actually how much a blessing those things are.
I think it was Jimmy Carr who pointed out recently that up until the past 100 years for sure, maybe even less time than that, no one, even royalty, had ever experienced a hot shower. Certainly not a hot shower on demand.
Yeah, I guess they would have been baths, right?
Right. Hot baths, maybe. And I guess if you're really going to make your servants work overtime, you could have them pour hot water over you. But a hot shower is one of the most basic luxuries that everyone adores these days that did not exist 100 years ago.
I guess they had like those Turkish baths where they'd have somebody with a big like scrubber scrub you down and stuff and pour water on you, get you clean.
Right.
That sounds more like a king activity.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I think you raise a good point, Thomas, which is that there's so many things to be thankful for, especially in this country, especially in 2024. It is, I will state without reservation, the best time for a human being to have ever been alive.
Yeah, it's hard to say. There's so many, we get fixated on, like we say, politics or something, and it's easy to get fixated on negative things. But there's so many positive things that are happening, good things that are happening, that it's in a lot of ways, it's a crying shame that we spend so much time complaining.
Yeah. And we're guilty of that more than, a lot of people. I think there's a reason sometimes, but we definitely should spend more than just this one holiday looking around at this wonderful world around us and being thankful for it. Yeah. I do want to say one other thing I'm thankful for. It kind of ties into some things we've said, but there has been a political upheaval after this election like I never believed would actually happen, where what used to be my kind of fringe college age libertarian beliefs about things like getting rid of the Department of Education are now in the conversation with powerful Republicans. Powerful Republicans who look like they might do it are talking about getting rid of the Department of Education. And I genuinely, even going into this election, never believed that would actually happen. And it might not, but there's hope for it at this point, which there hasn't been.
At least for meaningful reform.
Yeah. Well, I guess we could keep going, but we've kind of said all the things we're thankful for. I think that's a good place to wrap up.
There's hundreds more. If we were to take the time, but and I would encourage everyone to, that is, being thankful is almost more of a decision than it is a feeling. And I think part of the time is we tend to be more motivated rather than decision motivated. I'm putting that kind of strange, but what I'm saying is what we have to do to mature and to grow and to become more wise is we have to decide rather than just react.
Yeah.
And being thankful is more often a decision to actually take the time to think through and recognize, wow, this is good. This is good. I'm thankful for this, rather than, well, I'm not feeling it, so I'm not going to be saying thanks or something like that. I mean, it's a little simplistic. I mean, when you were taught as a child by your mom and dad, say thank you.
Yeah.
What were they teaching? They were teaching you something that I think sometimes we've gotten away from, that we need to recognize, no, this is something that is important and healthy.
Yeah.
And it is interesting that some of the people that are most pleasant to be around are those who exude thankfulness.
Yeah. And building on that, I think this is kind of some of the language of, nouveau philosophers, but being mindful of, things that could have gone wrong in your life and didn't, and being, taking time to meditate on what's my life actually like, leaving my emotions aside, what actually happened to me today, what happened to me this year, what happened to me, across my lifetime, and thinking about, wow, it could have gone all these other ways that I am glad they didn't. And especially at Thanksgiving, it gives us a moment. And like we said, we should do this throughout the year, but Thanksgiving gives us a moment where we do usually take that time and think about it and think, wow, I've got all these things that are just taken for granted every day that I should be and am thankful for.
Yeah. And that you're alive. Even that you get to experience life.
Yeah.
I mean, just contemplate that. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yep. We're blessed beyond measure.
We are.
That's true. Yeah. All right. I guess that's what we've got for you today. Go have a happy Thanksgiving. Eat some turkey.
Thanksgiving, definitely.
Loosen your belt,
Turkey or ham? What do you do?
Oh, my family does turkey. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, we do it all.
Yeah. I'm going to smoke a pork butt
Ooh.
to take to Thanksgiving. So we're going to have turkey and some pulled pork.
Exciting. My favorite is always the leftovers. Making the turkey sandwiches with gherkin pickles is what I do after Thanksgiving.
That's a good one.
Delicious.
Yeah.
Do you use mayo as well?
Oh yeah.
Mayo, mustard?
Yeah. Usually there's mustard.
We've
lettuce
discovered this year, we've discovered dill mustard.
Ooh.
It's good stuff.
All right. Pro tip.
All right. Yeah.
Pro tip to all the contrarians out there, pop culture contrarian fans.
Yeah.
Dill
Next
mustard.
week, we want to report that sales for dill mustard went through the roof.
Yeah. We want a piece of that too.
All right. Well, this has been the Pop Culture Contrarian with Thomas, Sterling, and Andrew. We're brought to you by the Patriot Post, which is the oldest conservative news digest on the web. It's right and it's free. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you after the holiday.
Bye.
Bye.
Happy Thanksgiving.